Suicide rates among preteen kids is on the rise. The alarming new study just released shines a light on a growing and heartbreaking problem in the U.S. We talked to a mental health pediatrician about what can lead these young children down a dangerous mental path.
In your life, speaking to the kid, who's on the sidelines cheering you on? And the kid who has no one they can identify on that sidelines is the kid at risk. And that kid's at risk for suicide.
That just got me. That I almost need a second, because when you think about, gosh, there are kids out there that don't have somebody on the sideline with them. That's terrifying.
And what to do as a parent if you're afraid for your own child's risk. That's today in a must-watch episode of Mom Squad. To all of my fellow parents, thank you for joining me for this very critical and devastating episode of Mom Squad. I'm Maureen Kyle, and 2 out of my 3 kids falls in the age range of preteen. So when the National Institutes of Health released a new report saying suicide rates among 8 to 12-year-olds is increasing, as a parent, I'm devastated and alarmed. I know you probably are too. So first, let's delve into their research. What researchers found is that suicide rates for kids among ages 8 to 12 increased 8% every year since 2008. Among racial and ethnic groups, American Indian and Alaskan Native youths have the highest rate of suicide overall, but the rate of suicide has risen the fastest among Black preteens. Even though the overall number of preteen suicides is still relatively small compared to adults, it is still the second leading cause of death for kids ages 10 to 14 and third leading cause of death for kids aged 15 to 24 years. All of this is heartbreaking, and if you know anyone struggling, the suicide hotline is 988. As a parent, we want to do anything we can to decrease this number and make sure that our kids stay at low risk. When this information was first released last week, I talked to Dr. Ellen Rome, head of adolescent medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. Take a listen to our conversation about the risks and red flags.
Knowing that there's an increase and a steady increase in suicide rates among preteens, is that something that surprises you, or do you feel like you've seen that age group come seeking help?
You're asking 2 different questions.
Okay.
The rise in suicide doesn't surprise us in adolescent medicine. We see far more kids, tweens and teens and young adults who are stressed. The challenge that your second question addressed, the challenge is access to care and having kids know to call 988, that they can access help, that there is help available. And we have still mental health and physical health care deserts where support is difficult to access or unavailable, or there's other barriers to care.
The age group, I guess, was surprising to me. I have 2 kids within that age group.
Yeah.
And it made me think, so what is it that they're exposed to? Is it an outside factor, or is this, where are the stressors coming from?
A lot of it is their personal enslavement devices, meaning their media access, their social media access. Mm-hmm. So kids are bombarded with others doing things not with them online. And the pressures of societal stress, pandemic stress, stress of isolation, stress of parents who are stressed, is just amplifying things that have always been there. And the outlets are more difficult. There's many people my generation where we were able to grow up and blow off steam because it was safe to go outside and play outside until dark, till the bell rang, or, ollie ollie income free. Everyone had to go home and have their shower and go to bed, get to bed. And everyone came home for family dinner and then went away. That was a fairly, that kind of upbringing where there are safe places to play, where there is freedom of expression, and where methods of violent death, including guns for homicide or suicide, all of these things make it easier for a kid to have the thought and impulsively act on it. We have bullying that used to be just in the schoolyard. Now it's amplified as cyberbullying. And we know that kids who are cyberbullied are more likely to commit suicide also. And that's invisible perpetrators and invisible victims.
So would you say, and I know it's going to depend on the kid, but would there be any other factors where a kid would be predisposed in some way, and then the social media use or a cyberbullying incident would push them over the edge? Or is this an equal opportunity situation where any kid could encounter cyberbullying or see that their friends are all hanging out at, the outdoor mall or the park without them, and that throws them into a mental health anguish that they need a call of help for?
All of the above. When kids feel isolated, othered, not included, that can raise issues of self-doubt and lead to a pathway to depression, anxiety, stress, suicide. And families do not necessarily have the skills to recognize and support kids. So for instance, to use an analogy from my friend and colleague, Dr. Ken Ginsberg, you've heard of Lighthouse parents?
Yes. But explain, please.
Okay. So you've heard of helicopter parents, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Helicopter parents swoop in and fix the problem. That doesn't teach a kid how to fail and get back up and be resilient. Snowplow parents just push all the stress out of the way. Ken Ginsberg coined the phrase being a lighthouse parent. So instead of a helicopter, you're a lighthouse with a moral compass to help with the kid's sense of direction. So for instance, the parent serves as safe harbor and a guiding light where the kid can't crash on the rocks or come into danger and the parent intervenes with it whenever it's an issue of safety or an issue where the moral compass is at risk. Mm-hmm. So the parent is the guiding light here. And a parent then is reliably there, totally trustworthy, making sure the kid isn't crashing into the rocks, and yet committed to letting that kid learn to ride the waves. Mm-hmm. As colleague and friend Dr. Lisa DeMoore talks about, the parent's the edge of the pool. So instead of a harbor, she uses a pool. And the kids will come, and when they're tired out and wrung out after a big day at school or in the neighborhood or wherever, they may cling to the edge of the pool. They may need a hug or whatever. But what do they do when they want to go swim in that pool again? They kick off the side. That's kicking off of the parent to go back and swim. So parents often aren't emotionally equipped or prepared to handle being kicked in the stomach when that kid goes to swim in that pool, or figuring out how not to be a helicopter, and how not to be a snowplow, or how not to be an absentee parent either. And many parents didn't get that role modeling for how to do that as well. We have many families where parents are working 3 jobs. So family dinner, a basic time of connection, isn't happening on a regular basis. And that's time where kids have the power to connect with a caring adult.
Yeah. So, you mentioned too about kids always, when they get into these risks, that are feeling excluded, the other. And I can tell you, because I help coach teams, and every kid, especially preteen, that's when they're starting to really feel the exclusion. That's when they really start to notice it. I definitely had a daughter who on the playground in preschool said, so-and-so said I can't play with her. Okay, that happens. But then that age group. So when should a parent be concerned when the kid comes home and says, I feel like I don't have any friends? Because I feel like that's pretty common, but when is it concerning?
It always is going to be heart-wrenching for the parent hearing that. And we have to discern as caring adults in their community, when is it time to don't just do something, stand there and listen and mirror, meaning if you hear them saying, oh, I'm really sad about that, say, wow, I'm really sad with you. That sounds really hard. Tell me more. And in mirroring the emotion, you can get the kid to start problem solving. And sometimes they just need to be with you in the emotion. And the other thing that we as parents and caregivers and clinicians find is that the kid will come and spill their emotional stress onto you. And we accept it like Velcro.
Right.
So then we're stressing about it, but the kid's already offloaded it and is on to the next thing. So that's where don't just do something, stand there can be useful to figure out where are they? What do they want to do? Checking in and checking in again and being accessible and available as a caring adult.
Coming up, Dr. Rome has me in tears. The question that predicts which kids are most at risk for suicide. It's one that every parent, teacher, and caregiver needs to be asking. But before we take that quick break, I want to share more data from this study. Researchers tied some of the increase back to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. They say the social isolation and stressors at home, combined with the lack of access to mental health services, contributed to the increase of suicide rates. During the first year of the pandemic, there were significantly more suicides among boys as young as 5 up to age 12 and also 18 to 24. Welcome back, and thanks for being with us as we discuss an extremely difficult topic, suicide rates among preteens. If you're just joining us, the National Institute of Health just released data showing a steady increase of suicide rates, 8% each year since 2008. Dr. Ellen Rome with the Cleveland Clinic talked to me about the most important question to predict if a kid is at risk and what they're being exposed to that leads them to suicide.
Another adolescent medicine great colleague and mentor to many, Dr. Bob Blum, was asked once, what's the one thing that predicts which kids are going to be okay? And he this was at a grand rounds, and he kind of twiddled with his tie and thought for a minute. And then he said, when something goes right in your life, speaking to the kid, who's on the sidelines cheering you on? And the kid who has no one they can identify on that sidelines is the kid at risk. And that kid's at risk for suicide. That kid's at risk for whatever maladaptive coping strategy comes easiest to them.
Oh my gosh, I love that analogy. Like that just got me. That I almost need a second, because you think about, gosh, there are kids out there that don't have somebody on the sideline with them. That's terrifying.
Never underestimate the power of a caring adult. We just got detailed or in-serviced about a service that I have not used yet, but that I hope to, called Eldera, Eldera. And it's a remote and virtual mentoring program of over 60-year-olds, so grandparent-aged or older people with tweens and teens. And it's all virtual. It's all out of the state that you're in. So it's not, the hope is that it's not somebody that they're seeing, but somebody that is just a virtual presence for them, but with email, text, FaceTime, whatever. And the adults are screened so that they're not getting sexual predators or other people that would be scary in kids' lives. But it's a form of remote mentorship and enacting another way to get a caring adult. And you'll get kids problem solving with this person that's not family, not in their lives day by day, and lots of value. And then the over 60-year-olds report a lot of positive joy of getting a chance to impact a young person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So win-win on all sides to combat isolation.
Yeah.
So programs like that, where it's positive youth development, are fabulous.
Yeah. I often hear too that parents, unfortunately, we've heard stories of suicide where the parent or the caregiver said, I never saw it coming. I had no idea. For preteens, is it something that they hide in any way?
Kids are often very good at hiding, and we're not so good at seeking as in the community. So the kid who's most at risk is the kid who's invisible, who doesn't have somebody cheering them on at the sidelines, who gets to school and doesn't have that one friend that they're excited to go see, or a favorite teacher, or a coach. It's not just parenting. It's not just a school. It's not just a community. It's not just a provider in a healthcare setting. We can do better at all levels. So things that we can do, catch them doing something right, and teach parents to say, hey, I love it when you do X, Y, Z. Do more of that.
Yeah.
And also teaching parents, teachers, communities that kids may not be lazy. It may be that they're so afraid of disappointing, that they care too much, that they don't want to try. That what in the book Mindset or the podcast is described as fixed mindset rather than growth mindset. If you're fixed on the outcome, you're more afraid of failure. You're more likely to fail. You're more at risk for lower self-esteem. If you're invested in the effort, if you're praised for the effort rather than the A at the end, you're more likely to work harder and get joy from the journey. Mm-hmm. So we want to encourage growth mindset to help with resiliency as well. If we assume lazy or don't care, then the kids may accept the label because it offers an easy way out. And then they may feel angry or shamed or any other negative emotion that we don't see them for who they really are. Yeah. And so then we're missing the joy of them.
Yeah. You mentioned content earlier with social media, and we all have devices in our hands now, and some kids get devices at really young ages. What do you think is the content that they're exposed to that could be the most dangerous?
Cyberbullying, anything that threatens their self-esteem and tells them that they're worthless or whatever else. Other things, gun access, other things about body image, for instance, or things that assault self-esteem in other forms are all risks for teen suicide.
I know we had covered in the past about, especially body image, like you brought up, that the algorithms, and I know that some of the social media heads were brought to Congress and had to testify in front of Congress because of the algorithms, that if a young girl was searching for anorexia, it was easy to find. But especially too with the research found that especially young males were getting access to firearms, and the fact that they knew how to use them. Is that, I mean,
shooting games,
where did they see this?
Well, shooting games make it really easy to have good aim. They're learning this in video games from a very young age. Mm-hmm. So when you put firearms in their hands, they're already good at aiming and firing. So that's a first world modern problem. And on social media, you can get both negative energy and positive energy from what you see around you in real life and on social media. And both negative energy and positive energy are contagious. If all you see is negative, that is a stress amplifier. And social media, most people don't post they're sad. they post their glad, they post their joy. And so not as many people see the less than pretty or perfect moments. So if if a kid is comparing and feeling not good enough, they may need a media break. And that often takes an adult to promote that. It's not something that's intuitive for them to step away from because of the dopamine pathway of constantly seeing what's online. And if you're watching all the stories that make you feel left out, stop watching those stories. But that's not part of an adolescent's mindset usually because they don't have that frontal cortex, that executive functioning to know and to follow through on stepping away. And the other one is it kind of promotes ADD kind of behavior. If you're checking your Insta in between every page of homework, you're not going to tune into the homework very well. So too much social media can end up with grade sliding. Again, if you find yourself getting angry or lonely or constantly comparing or more judgmental or feeling like you're always being judged, that's a kid where it's time to step away from social media and they may need adult support to do that.
If social media and devices are one of the biggest influences on preteen mental health and puts them at risk for suicide, what age is appropriate?
We want kids to be able to learn the limits from the start. It's harder to give the kid the phone and then suddenly at 14 say, you know what, wait, I'm going to check all your texts.
After a quick break, we asked Dr. Rome her opinion and what you should do if you notice someone else's child with these red flags. Welcome back. We've been talking with head of adolescent medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Ellen Rome, about the new study from the National Institute of Health showing preteen suicide rates are on a steady incline. She says cell phone use and social media is partly to blame. So, what age is the right age? I asked her.
In your professional opinion, and I've talked to experts like Lisa DeMore and others, what do you think is the right age to start to introduce social media? Because there's a lot of literature right now and a big focus in holding off until a certain age and then slowly teaching them how to use it. What age do you think is okay to maybe start to explore social media?
The older, the better. But we have families where they want to be able to know for safety wise where their kid is, or they want the kid to be able to call. So that may be something where the kid has a flip phone instead of internet access on their phone that's unlimited. And you have to figure out what do they need for school to be able to connect and do their homework? What do they need in order for family safety to be able to be found for pickups or drop-offs or whatever else? And then it becomes a matter of how do you regulate? So for 14 and under, or as early as they get a phone, it's worthwhile starting with parent has full access, end of story. And by high school, when the kid doesn't have full executive functioning, but has a little more, they may earn the privilege to be a little more private. For sake of sleep, we would love it if kids have an alarm clock and are not using this as an alarm, because then they're having it go off all night and maybe texting friends at 3 a.m. So if it's normative for them to charge it in the kitchen, that's easier than having it under their pillow. Yeah. So we want kids to be able to learn the limits from the start. It's harder to give the kid the phone and then suddenly at 14 say, you know what, wait, I'm going to check all your texts, when that's not been normative before.
Right, that makes sense. And I know you're squeezing us in between patients, and I'm so appreciative. But one more question before I let you go, because I think that then this is key too. When you talked about the kid who might not have somebody, and I mentioned, I coach. I know a lot of other parents are involved and volunteer at the school. If a parent who is not the caregiver or not the parent of that child notices that a kid looks like he or she is being isolated, like we see from an outsider perspective, the warning signs, what would you recommend is the best way to go about finding a safe place for that kid, or maybe raising that warning flag?
Just like we teach kids stranger danger from a very, very, very young age, we want to teach them about 988. That if you or a friend have a crisis where you're worried for their safety or yours, it's okay to call 988. That's our suicide crisis line. We have a wonderful program in Cleveland called Advantage Cleveland. It teaches tennis, literacy, fitness, creativity, wellness to 6 to 16-year-olds as a summer camp with a wraparound year program. And we just did a health segment 2 days ago there, and with one of our med students, Hannah Clark, a super creative, inspiring med student and future leader. And we found ourselves with a group of 6, 7-year-olds when we thought we were only getting 10 and ups. So with 6, 7-year-olds, what do? We taught them about stranger danger. We taught them about how do you ask a parent for help? What do you do? How do you call 911? How do you call 988? What happens? I told them the story of my daughter who, when she was 3, had learned about 911 and didn't realize that the police actually came. And so she picked up the phone and knew where 911 were and called that. And sure enough, the police came, and she went and hid in the bathroom. And the policeman had to say, when you call, we actually come and we actually have to see your face. And it was a big learning moment for her. So these 5 and 6, 6 and 7-year-olds gave us big hugs at the end of the day. And we had them drawing their emotions. There's all sorts of ways that you can have even littles, but also tweens and teens, know how to access a lifeline. And 988, our emergency suicide hotline, is a wonderful resource for everything. In addition, 988 can also help connect you with what are local resources. So a parent can use that as well. And your pediatrician is a great resource to say, I don't know what's wrong, but I see something's wrong. And parents should trust their mothers and fathers' instincts. If they sense that something's wrong, get help and keep connecting. And family dinners help. Role modeling conversations on handling stress is super important. Like, wow, this was really hard for me today, and here's what I did. And it didn't work out perfectly, but I did my best in the moment. So hearing how parents are resilient can shape how kids learn to handle stress and moments of failure as well. So don't just share what goes well, but also share what doesn't go well and what you learned. And, what are you proud or happy about today? So you can sandwich the negatives with the positives. It's also important to pay attention to where they are on social media, just as we talked about, and helping the whole family unplug from social media appropriately. And if your child is thinking about suicide, talk to them immediately. That can't wait. And don't be afraid to use the word suicide. Talking about suicide is not going to plant ideas in their head. Make sure in that situation that there's not enough medicines in the medicine cabinet for that kid to have an impulsive moment and take everything lethally. Make sure there's not guns in the house. If you have to have a gun in the house, make sure it's locked in one place and the bullets are locked in another, and that the kid doesn't have those comms. We'll have kids in the office. We ask them about guns, and I'll have a 10-year-old with grandma, and grandma, who's the caregiver, and grandma will say, oh yeah, I have a handgun, but the kid, but Johnny doesn't know where it is. And Johnny's like, rolling his eyes. And I say, Johnny, where's the handgun? Oh, it's in the shoebox behind X, Y, and Z in grandma's closet. So kids know. So making sure that an impulsive moment doesn't end up being a lethal moment. And again, making sure they know about 988 is super, super important.
Dr. Rome, this was so insightful. I can't thank you enough for shedding a light on this. I mean, it's terrifying as a parent to even start to think about these things, but I feel like it's so important. And everything you said was so eye-opening. I appreciate it.
Oh, I hope this was useful. I so appreciate you putting a spotlight on this, because it's going to take more of us talking about it to help prevent the next suicide.
Let's be honest, this was a heavy episode. This is never information that we want to hear, but we need to hear it. Please share this episode with other parents. You can also share the suicide prevention hotline 988. We need to bring awareness to these mental health issues so that we can help save even one life. Again, thank you for taking the time and joining me here on Mom Squad. You can get more information and connect with us on Facebook. You can look for Mom Squad with Maureen Kyle Facebook page, or you can find us on Instagram @Mom Squad Show. We'll see you back here next time.